Good evening, Moore, and welcome. Tonight we're going to be venturing into the depths of the woods because there are cabins here waiting for our arrival. I hope you're ready because it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. This happened a little over a year ago on a Sunday early in the morning. I live in the suburbs, but my parents own a farm that I like to go to as I get to see my dog Molly. She's a mutt, but she's not a tiny dog by any means. At that time, I felt very safe with her, and would often take her for walks in a forest that was nearby. The day started off like any other. Me and my dad got in the car, drove around for a while, and arrived at the farm. I immediately got out of the car and hugged Molly. My parents always got angry when I hugged her since I'd smell like her for rest of the day. I put my leash on her and asked my dad if I could take her for a walk. He always thought that we would go down a road and back, but I always kind of found it more interesting to take her to the forest, where I always felt a certain kind of peace and relaxation that was unmatched by anything else. So we took a turn and headed towards the forest. Usually, when there I would take her leash off so she could wander on her own. Most of the time, I'd carve my name into the trees or look for anything interesting. I was playing baseball with some rocks and a wooden leg, probably off some old table. That is when I heard it. Molly was barking at something. This wasn't the usual bark when we're in the forest. I thought it was a fox or some other animal, so I took the wood leg like a weapon to my side. I knew that if it was a fox, it wouldn't attack, but I had a sense of security while I was holding it. I called out, "Molly." She continued barking. This was very strange since she always comes when I call her. I followed the sound of her barks and stumbled across a scene I will never forget. There was a man, probably in his late 50s, half naked, with a large machete in one hand and moonshine in the other. This was the first time I'd ever stumbled across someone in the woods, let alone half naked, carrying a big-ass machete. He seemed to completely be ignoring Molly and was just hacking away at the ground. For some reason, I didn't really know how to handle the situation. Even now, I don't have any idea how I would handle it. "Sir, are you okay?" I asked in confusion. I don't think I understood the seriousness of the situation at the time. He turned around, revealing his face. He had some of the clearest blue eyes I have ever seen. To this day, I could see them so well because they were so wide. "Come here, boy, look what I've dug up." I was afraid that if I didn't do what he said, he would start to chase me, which is something I wanted to avoid. I got closer but kept a good distance. At all costs, I didn't see anything but an empty hole. He returned to hitting the ground with his machete and occasionally taking sips from the bottle. I used this window of time to get my dog and started walking away slowly as to not notify him that I was leaving. But then I took one final glance at the man. His head was dug deep in the hole. I was intrigued, so I kept looking. I know it was foolish of me. He got up from the ground and I was shocked when I saw him carrying a bone in his mouth. I have no idea which animal it belonged to, if it even did belong to an animal. I had seen enough and began sprinting away with my dog as we ran. I heard him laughing, and that's when I saw something flying from the corner of my eye. It was the machete. I heard him yell. This really made me run Christ faster. I wasn't scared of getting lost since I knew the forest pretty well. I ripped through the branches and bushes until I got out of there, not stopping the sprint until I arrived at a garage where my father was testing lights on our tractor. I didn't tell him a single thing about the man since I was afraid that he would angry and would never have let me walk Molly again. Not surprisingly, I never went to that forest alone again. Man with the machete and bone in his mouth, I have no intention of running into you again. I used to live way out in the country. The town itself had less than 200 people in it. I used to work all night in one of the metro areas, and it was a 40-minute drive with about 15 of it on a country road. I used to think I would see stuff in the fields like coyote, deer all of the time, never thought twice. Well, one morning I was on my way home at about 3 a.m. and we had a little bridge to cross right before we got to our road. As I'm approaching crossing the bridge, I can see something pearly white hanging out in the middle of the road. I thought it was probably a swan and would move. As I got closer, I realized swans aren't that big. I was in an F-150 and it was eye level with me when its wings opened up. It quite literally covered both lanes of traffic. I swerved to miss it but hit something of the wing. I hit my brakes hard and looked in my rearview mirror. Whatever it was long gone without a trace, and I never saw it again. If it was a bird, it's the biggest bird I have ever seen. Oh, and I also must tell you that I was nowhere near any Great Lake. My name is Jack. This story took place just outside of Minot, North Dakota when I was 17. My church group was having a backyard bash. This was just all the ones who played music in the surrounding congregation in North Dakota get together in one of the members' backyards and play music, could bring some food and hang out with some really fantastic people. This took place last night before all the boys my age stayed up late hanging out at Jared's house. If any of you are from Minot, this took place across the Bison Trail before Velva. Anyway, that evening all the boys were watching Hot Rod inside around 11 p.m. Evan, Jared, Tyler, my younger brother, and I went outside to talk and hang out by Evan's fancy truck he was way too proud of. His house was on a hill. The driveway went about 100 feet where Evan's truck was parked. The front yard slowly declined to the road and field fanned out for about 300 feet, then inclined up a sizable hill. It was pitch black that time. We were all around Evan's truck, just chatting and having fun, are now talking, when suddenly Evan interrupts and says, "Wait, did you hear that?" We all stopped and said no. I asked what he heard, and he said it sounded like a deep grunting gasp noise. I asked you all to be quiet and listen for anything, and we heard nothing but bugs, so we dismissed it, but Evan seemed uneasy. After a further 10 minutes in our chat, we now all had ceased the chatter naturally as we halted between our thoughts to think of what to talk about. Just then we heard the sound again, all of as in unison. The noise was this deep grunt exhale noise that upon Evan has us stop and look at the direction it came from. We didn't see anything. Evan had his keys and decided to turn on his headlights. As it was parked in the right direction, we saw a pair of eyes reflect just beyond the beam of his headlights about 400 feet away. I went in the house and grabbed a Maglite, one of the world's best flashlights of all time, and went out to the side of the road, and Jared helped. I twisted the head to train the beam into a spot, and there was white-tailed buck, a large one, making its way up the hill from bottom right to top left. I had spotted the animal with a beam on it, and we were roughly 250 yards away. He stopped and looked at us. I began speaking to him, saying the typical things. "Hey buddy, what you doing out here?" And after about 2 minutes of us talking to him and he just stared at us, it began to pick back up its direction, but all of a sudden we heard that same noise again, a grunt. A deep exhale. Jared and I looked at each other puzzled, and I put my light on him again upon walking up over the hill, but somehow wrong, it was really limping badly. We knew there was something wrong, and that is when we heard a roar, 50 feet from our right, the scariest sound I've ever heard, but I've heard it before, in movies and games, mountain lion. It was the first time hearing it in person, but I knew by the tone it was angry, basically saying, "Get the hell away from my meal, or I'll have you for dessert." When it roared, Jared and I looked at each other and halted back to the house. Tyler and Evan were still by the truck when we were down there, but they responded in the same manner we did, since when we had zoomed by the truck in our retreat they were by the open house door holding it for us. We told a few of the guys that we were still up and nothing purchased it, but we knew what we saw and heard: mountain lions 3 miles outside of town in North Dakota. Yeah, okay, yeah, I know they're rare, but they're being pretty / very shaken up about it. But my brother and I went to go look for tracks, blood trails, or carcasses. We reached the deer that we were walking up on when I put my arm out in front of my brother to stop us both, and I heard a rattling. I then saw a rattlesnake pop up 10 feet away and decided the universe was giving us stop signs, so we went back. Gerald, over time Evan turned out to be a pretty messed up person that I didn't want to be around anymore, but my brother and I are still close and we talk about that night to this day. Mountain lions are my favorite animal, and from this encounter I have the utmost respect for them, but after this night I never went out hiking, biking, or walking in that area without protection for a fight I would lose, because somehow inside I had a feeling that this time I was not going to get a second warning. Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed tonight's spine-chilling camping tales. Your support means the world, and I can't wait to bring you more heart-pounding horror stories soon. Stay safe, stay curious, and until next time, keep the campfire burning. Like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe the channel.